you do create a lot of oxidative products from cardio. You put someone on a treadmill for an hour and say they do 130 plus beats per minute, heart rate, da da da. Okay, great. They get certain result, but they're not building more muscle. They're losing fat, but their metabolic rate is actually down regulating because they're putting the body in a state of overstress, overburden.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching our videos. If you'd like to support us some more, you can explore our homemade natural skincare products at purelytallow.com. Thank you so much for supporting my small business. Hey everybody, welcome to the Carnivore Revolution. Today, my special guest is Jonathan Griffiths, and today we're going to get his information and his help on weightlifting, whether or not we need carbs, and we're going to hear his story. Jonathan, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on. I've been a long time follower of your channel, and I heard of you through Bart K a few, maybe a year or so ago. Glad to be here and hopefully give people some valuable advice and information.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. So let's start with your story and how you became this like carnivore bodybuilder, because so many people think we need carbs to build muscle like that. So let's kind of get into that and hear your story first.
Absolutely, yes. So I'm 29 years old. I look about 40 odd as a result of bad choices and bad medical interventions over the past 10 or so years. So I'll just say that before anyone else says it in the comments because I like to be clever. That's the problem with being male. There's lots of egos out there, as we found out. But it's nice to speak to other people like-minded like yourself who just want to, as we spoke before, just help people out and give people good, valuable information. So how I got into carnivore diet, good question. I was diagnosed late in life with autistic spectrum disorder. I have very severe symptoms of it, but I hide them very well, and I'm exceptionally good at masking, and my communication skills are quite good in spite of it. Due to my upbringing, lots of clubs, social, sports, I've been given that upper hand compared to my other neurodivergent counterparts. So how I got to the carnivore diet was through just a number of different means. I mean, firstly, I was always drawn towards extremes. Autistic people tend to have extreme passions. So I've tried lots of different diets before. None of them really worked because it didn't give me that extreme result I wanted. I mean, I wanted to feel good, sleep well. I wanted my brain to be cleared of fog. I've got spine disease, chronic fatigue, hip impingement, got loads of health problems, very severe that do cause me day-to-day agonizing pain. Anyway, what happened was I was working at a time at a vegan health food shop around late 2019 to early 2020. And since then, I've been a massive advocate of the carnivore diet. I was seeing lots of people come through, lots of customers come in, and they were saying, I'm not well, this, that, and the other. And there's always digestive problems, this, that, and the other. And then I think I came across a video. I think it was by Phil Escott or maybe Sean Baker, one of those two at the time. And it was all about mental health and the carnivore diet. And I'm like, this guy's you can tell this guy's being honest, because I was listening to Phil Escott and we still collaborate to this day. Still good friends. So it's just interesting to see someone that I could resonate with. And bear in mind, he's older than me, but he trained a bit. So we're both kind of like bodybuilders at one point, or me current, him former. And what I noticed was, there's actually people doing this. Like this is giant Sean Baker guy doing it. And then came across Professor Bart K. I've been following for quite a few years now. Collaborated with lots of people, men, women. Mental health was the biggest part of it for me. And obviously people come to it because, you'll lose weight and this ever. We've all found some sort of physical health, body composition benefit in terms of a journey on the carnivore diet. But for me, it's always been about mental health. And a lot of my symptoms of autism drastically improved. And I was actually speaking with Dr. Chafee about a year and a half ago. And a year before that, at that point in time, maybe 2 years before that, I was not in a position to go online and talk with people. So it just tells me that although I've been carnivore now for 4.5 years, there's patches and road bumps along the way. So you start listening to different people to try and fine tune your diet. And a lot of what I do in terms of my interventions nowadays are biohacking, particularly around light and sound. So music has a profound effect on me. So I try to avoid a lot of music, unless it's nice stuff that I enjoy and makes me feel good. And light is a big one for me. So sitting here doing these recordings is quite stressful for me. I try to isolate myself and bring myself into a meditative state. As if I'm in the gym, when people are training and they're concentrating. That's what it's like for me when I'm in a recording. So outside interference doesn't go. I'm just trying to eliminate all, narrow warhorse kind of vision. Just focus on the task at hand, which is to deliver information and explain my story right now. So there we go. Anyway, so yeah, 4.5 years into the carnivore diet, and I've had miraculous benefits. I don't say that lightheartedly. Honestly, I don't know many people that come into way of eating, then fall off. What we found with people that do calorie counting, macro tracking, Weight Watchers, all these different programs, some are effective to different degrees, some less effective. We find there's a massive drop-off rate. But we just don't see this with the carnivore diet. We see lots of people have adaptation issues, which people like Serena and myself will help people go through and deal with at that point in time. But I have found, largely speaking, people are just walking away after 3 months thinking, oh my God, I didn't realize I could stop this hip pain. I can
Mhm.
now play with my children. And I'm like, this is going across the board now. And I'm getting testimonies and anecdotes like this myself all the time. And some of the nicest people I've actually met, contrary to popular belief, have actually been ex-vegans. So it
Mhm.
tells me there's a lot of people out there who are vegan right now. We look at the numbers. Even if it's 1 or 2% of the population, we can still think there's 1 or 2% of people out there that are potentially really, really going to stand to see a great benefit from the carnivore diet. We've just got to pull them over. So it's about giving people that right approach. So I've interviewed and debated a vegan gentleman within the last week or two, and I'm sure that'll be quite a hit video. But when you watch that video, there's no hate between us. We're
Right.
both guys that have just had these horrible health circumstances, and we're trying to get past it. There's more than one way to skin a cat. We obviously know the carnivore diet for various reasons is probably the best way to skin that cat, but you can't fool everyone into believing in the testimonies that we have, as in we can't sort of push people harder and harder and harder and be hateful. So I try to put information like this in a positive light about autism because it is such a small niche in our space. I
Mhm.
understand people like yourself do talk about it a little bit and a
Mhm.
few select others, but it's something which I think is integral to the livelihood of a carnivore individual that lives, with autistic spectrum disorder.
Mhm.
I strongly believe that people that stand the best chance of getting some strong benefit from it. If only people would listen. If only people interact with other autistic people. So I'm in a unique position here where I can sort of speak as an autistic person on behalf of other autistic individuals, and hopefully people see how wacky and weird I am. They might join in and think, well, I'll reveal my testimony because I'm sure there's more people out there like me that have got the same experience, if not better. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if you know Kimberly Robinson. She is mindfully grounded on Instagram. Her nephew recently, I believe he's 13, went from being a nonverbal autistic child to being verbal just from incorporating more red meat, which I just think is amazing. Yeah,
We're talking about speaking here, guys. Like
I know.
going
Right.
from the ability of not being able to speak to speak,
Speaking.
like one of the most integral human evolutionary adaptation traits that we do have.
Mhm.
That's so important. So yeah, I hear things like that quite often, and
Yeah.
I appreciate
Really
that.
amazing. Yeah. And when we talk about in terms of the carnivore diet, when we're talking about that, we're not talking about it, you and I, for the purposes of this conversation, mostly, we're not talking about it as a diet. We're talking about nutrition and health, not because we think you should be on a diet, to lose weight necessarily. We're talking about health, mental health, physical health, the way your body works, your muscles. Because although the carnivore diet is an incredible diet, even for losing weight, I think the topic of health is something that ends up kind of taking the back burner because so many people are trying to lose weight. So many people in this world are overweight and sick because of it, and or just sick, but typically overweight and sick and trying to lose weight. And so the carnivore diet is a great way to do that, but it's also an incredible way to heal your mind and heal your body. And so let's talk about some weightlifting things now. Were you a bodybuilder? How long have you been a bodybuilder?
Well, so I've been bodybuilding now since around about the age of 14. I'm
Okay.
29, so about 15 years. It's been absolutely marvelous, if I'm honest. So prior to all this, yeah, I was consuming a massive amount of carbohydrates. I did get to my end point in terms of a high level of muscle mass, physicality, strength in the gym, doing a carb-centric diet, a plant-based diet, effectively. I was never
Mhm.
vegan or vegetarian,
Yeah.
but I was eating 1,000 grams of carbohydrates a day. It's going to be plant-based,
That's
and that was
crazy.
every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it wrecked my body. The
Mhm.
glycation, the damage, you can see I'm older than, well, I look older than what I am, which I just deal with. And there's so many other things as well. Like the main thing was like digestion and sleep.
Mhm.
My brother used to sort of notice when I slept at night, I'd lie there and my chest would be like thudding, like almost like you think like someone in the room, like a bear next to me. What's going on?
Mhm.
Anyway, so I've actually noticed I had asthma as well. So my airways actually opened up a little bit. So I probably had about 20% higher respiration capacity. Those thing called spirometry machines, where you breathe into it, it measures how much power
Yes.
you output.
Hmm.
So my power output has gone up, and I'm not even that kind of athlete. I'm a physical development athlete. I'm not a sports athlete. You know, I'm not training to be fit. That's not my goal. My training is very physique based.
Hmm.
So that just shows you, you know, there's other benefits to be had, which is
Yeah.
insane. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like the bodybuilding side of it, which is effectively what a lot of us are trying to do. If you're interested in body composition, whether you're male, female, young or old, you're probably a bodybuilder, really. So you need to look towards people that have done that already.
Hmm.
So there's other bodybuilders in this space as well. So the chances are they've achieved something through certain specific means. And I think there's a lot of nonsense going around the community about different ratios, and I've not seen people benefit from it. I've worked with over 400 people in a coaching setting to improve their body composition outcomes. And what I see online is not the truth, which is why people like me, you'll find us to be a little bit hidden in this community because we don't sell fads, we sell hard work.
Hmm.
That hard work just takes a long, long time, a lot of discipline. But yeah, we can talk about more about that if you want. But yeah, I mean, the training side of it has been much better. I recover better, I sleep better. My ability to actually train to a high degree and frequently is better. And I actually done some different experiments myself, being autistic, hyper passionate about training and bodybuilding. I did a meat, fruit, and honey experiment, and this was about a year ago. And it was as well controlled as I could possibly do it as an autistic person. That's following a carnivore diet that is got a human nutrition degree that is very, very scientific,
Hmm.
without putting myself in a lab. And I found my training performance actually decreased in terms of strength endurance by around 10 to 15%. And this was a 3 day intervention. So from relatively strict carnivore diet, added in fruit and honey. I basically took out the fat portion or reduced the fat portion, increased the carbohydrate portion, but kept the protein the same. So, you know, the proportion of energy substrate was the main determinant or
Hmm.
alteration intervention that I used. And I didn't experience any benefit. And Sean Baker found the same thing. He's like,
Hmm.
he doesn't have the deleterious effects on health that I do when I eat these sort of foods, but
Yeah.
he did find that there was no train performance benefit to be had from adding in fruit, honey, rice, or whatever. So that's been the main interesting thing. It's not like I've come to this and just said, "Oh, you know, I've done it now. Now it's work." Oh, no, I actually look back. I tried to go back on myself and change my hypothesis and alter or disprove myself, but I couldn't disprove myself. The carnivore diet works for body composition, training, exercise, sports, everything.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I have found no downside to being a carnivore. Now, you mentioned ratios. So, do you have a recommendation for people who are lifting weights, trying to build muscle, and also on the carnivore diet? Do you have a recommendation for fat and protein ratios for them?
Largely, I avoid protein fat ratios.
Okay.
I made a video saying that it's a load of crap, basically, about a year ago.
Okay.
The reason why I said that is because your body doesn't know ratios or proportions.
Hmm.
You're actually diverting away from the point of having some kind of tracking or counting part of your diet, because you're putting these numbers, protein and fat, two separate entities that have two separate roles for the body. And there's a fine line in the middle where you kind of need a bit of both to do different things. You can't just do one or the other. Now, some people do one or the other for certain medical reasons, perhaps, but outside of that, it's largely ineffective in terms of going to extremes. So doing 90% fat is not effective for anyone I've ever met in my life. The same token, going 80% protein, if we're talking about caloric value, is nuts. You'll be constipated. You're basically just eating steamed boiled chicken breast. So I'm not saying to people, do this or that. I'm saying you have a certain requirement for one, certain requirement for the other. Protein tends to remain stable, given that I use my calculations based on people's individual ideal body weight or lean body mass. So I need to work out what someone looks like, how their physique presents themselves in terms of body fat. Then I go from what is actually muscle tissue on their body or lean tissue, skeletal tissue that does have a turnover and requirement of protein. The fat is what is the main lever. So, for example, if I was coaching you, Serena, for whatever reason, I'd find it protein. I'd go by satiety signals, how you feel, how you sleep, how your digestion is, maybe how your skin, hair, and nails feel after a few weeks. Add in the intervention. Okay, that's fine. You feel good. You're training well. You're getting stronger. You're sleeping well. No problems there. You're not excessively urinating because you're eating too much protein to excrete the byproduct urea. But then at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, well, you want to lose body fat. You're getting stronger. but you're not getting leaner, but your body's maintaining the same kind of weight. I might just keep it the same, because you're recompositioning, you're gaining muscle, losing fat. Why make an extra change when what you're doing already works? Use the minimum effective dose, the least abrasive option to get towards the goal. So yeah, that's where I'm at for that. But then if you came to me and said, "Oh, I'm gaining too much weight and I don't want to be this muscular," yeah, I'd decrease the protein. And if you're struggling to lose fat, I'd reduce the fat. It tends to be at maybe 10-gram kind of reductions each week, or much quicker depending on someone's time frame and what goals they have on hand. But yeah, I think for most people, the protein should remain pretty stagnant for the most part, unless their training capacity and frequency goes up drastically, their training load. Otherwise, the fat is the main thing that moves. And I found that myself. For the last 4.5 years, I've been carnivore. My protein take has been largely 350 grams plus per day of protein. Carbohydrates been below 40 or 50 grams through dairy and eggs, things like that. It's a bit less now because I don't eat as much dairy as I used to. Just don't have the appetite for it, so
Mhm.
I still have some, but just not that much. And fat has been anywhere, honestly, from 120 grams at the lowest point in my contest preparation phase up to 380 grams of fat per day in my off-season or gaining phase. And it's been extremely effective. I I'm a big proponent of getting people to a start point though. So it might be that you go 1-to-1 protein to fat. If someone comes to me and they're very inactive, maybe they've got hormonal issues, maybe they've got chronic fatigue, maybe they need to do a bit of deuterium depletion sort of stuff, maybe incorporate some fasting, maybe under the right circumstance. And perhaps even I might actually increase their fat and lower the protein. So you might be on 1 gram of protein to 1.2 grams of fat. But that's largely where I see nearly everyone going towards that I work with. That gets good results. But there are times when you can push it in either direction further. But
Mm.
there's different reasons, different ways to skin a cat. So it just comes down to the individual, and I base my practice and coaching based on principles rather than programs and set ideas about things. I work on first principles. So what gets people from point A to point B in the safest and healthiest way.
So what I have found for me, because you mentioned, I think you said there's no reason for somebody to be at 90% fat, I think is what you said. And for me, what I have found that for weight loss mode for me, if I eat 90 or even 95% fat, which is incredibly difficult to do, I lose weight a lot better. But I predict that I'm not really building a lot of muscle if I'm doing that. And so I'm kind of in that weird spot where I have 7 pounds left to get to my goal. I'm not really sure how important that 7 pounds is. I would rather build muscle than lose weight, necessarily, because what I want to lose is fat, not weight. I mean, we put so much
Hmm.
focus on the weight, but really what I want to lose is fat. And so we put so much focus on that I have a hard time deciding where my macros should actually be. I have tried 1-to-1, so 1 gram of both protein and fat per pound of ideal body weight. I've tried that, and the scale just kind of tends to stay the same. I do have an in-body scale, and I have not been as dedicated as I should be with like checking that once a week, when I'm at those macros, to kind of see. And so you talked about fat kind of being the threshold, I mean, kind of being the lever. So if I start out with 1-to-1 and don't really feel like it's working, I lower the fat, like you said, let's say 10 grams each week or something to see what happens. Is there a point where you would stop doing that because your calories are getting too low? Because we don't want the calories to go too low either, right?
In terms of food mass, I always refer to food intake or macronutrient intake just as mass. I don't use calories as a metric because
Okay.
it's a default way of going away from what we already do have, which does work, being macros, if that makes sense. But I know exactly what you're saying. You're saying the amount of effective energy contained within a certain diet plan. You find that how far do you go? Basically, that's a good question. Basically, you look at someone's day-to-day life, and if someone isn't sleeping at night, maybe you need to pull the lever of activity and exercise more. Maybe it's the resistance training if you're doing that, or someone is. Maybe they're doing too much training. Maybe they actually need to scale back. So again, it comes down to like the main point of what I'm saying is like you look at the macros as like the main levers, the big rocks. Then you might leverage the other stuff as well. So I might even put someone on a leptin reset protocol, maybe for 2 weeks. I get them to eat big meals in the morning, protein and fat, and stay in touch with the circadian rhythm sort of thing. So do all that biohacky sort of stuff, and sometimes that will resolve the issue. Beyond that point, it goes beyond the scope of my practice. And I say that quite deliberately because I don't perform blood tests people. I'm not a phlebotomist, but that's when I'd say, okay, maybe there's something hormonally going on. And I find a lot of time there is. And it would usually be, the thyroid kind of issues. And the other one is cortisol issues. And as the elevated cortisol can, the thing about cortisol people misunderstand or maybe don't perhaps comprehend is that cortisol is needed to help emulsify the fats so you can oxidize them and turn them into energy. Through the catecholamine response, the cascade that happens naturally for your body, adrenaline, noradrenaline, or epinephrine and epinephrine, depending on where in the world you are. So you need enough cortisol. So the goal isn't to blunt out cortisol, because then you won't stimulate beta oxidation of fatty acids. So you have to find out where that person lies. So people like me, I don't respond well to high stress situations, high stress life. For me, it's actually better. I'm actually better spending half an hour a day extra in bed, having a nap or during the day, than going out for a walk. It works out better for my body, my hormonal profile. So that's when we get the big rocks, and we move further and further down the scale. Then it becomes out of my scope as a practitioner, as a body composition coach. So I stay in my lane effectively. I don't try to, this is how you fix your fire, or, that's not me. I can give people tips and suggestions based experience, but I'm not someone that's going to diagnose or prepare drugs for people through, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And for me, and I know a lot of other women who say this same thing, if I undereat, I get stuck. And it's probably from my past of extreme dieting and undereating. And I mean, I would go for months of, either juice fasting or, just eating 800 or 900 calories a day for months. And so ultimately for years, I have been, this chronic dieter and chronic undereater. And so for me, if I don't eat enough, I don't lose weight. And there actually have been times where I've gained weight. And I don't know if it's because on the days where I do eat a little bit more, my body holds on to everything. I'm not sure. And so that's why I mentioned the calories as far as the fat being the lever, because for somebody like me, if I do this, if I say, okay, I'm going to up my protein, because right now I just checked my macros at a 75% fat, 25% protein ratio for me. That's between 16 and 1700 calories, and only has me at, I think it's 102 grams of protein. And then obviously, more fat than that. So it has me at 105 grams of protein and about 140 grams of fat for me. So if I essentially reverse those, or, if I change those macros and increase my protein, I have to be careful because, and I think a lot of women do, I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, but if we raise our protein and then fat is the lever and we start to lower fat and lower fat and lower fat, at what point, if we're not paying attention to calories, at what point, how do we know? Because it wasn't working, right? So that's why we started lowering our fat, and we lower our fat and lower our fat. And if it's still not working, at what point do we say, okay, I need to check my calories or see how much I'm actually eating? Because that's a really slippery slope for women, especially who have been these chronic dieters. It's so easy to think less is better. And then before we know it, we're eating, 800 or 900 calories a day, and nothing's going to work.
Yeah, so my very rough general guidelines for the average person, big, small, female, male, old, young, no less than 100 protein, 100 fat per day. That's across the board. I don't care. I don't care if someone comes to me and they're like, I've been doing 100 grams of fat and 80 grams of protein for the last 3 months. I've not lost weight. I'm increasing your food intake, because that is not a default way to live. I don't push people down that slope ever. So I've never had a client below 100 protein, 100 fat in any circumstance, even the late end phases of contest preparation where they're going on stage or something like that. I look at something else. It's usually a leptin reset protocol.
Okay. So if I were to start, I do 1-to-1, same amount of grams of protein and fat. So my goal weight is 125. So if that's where I start for me, and I start lowering my fat because it's not working, at 100 grams, I stop lowering my fat. And then we know something else must be the problem, leptin, hormones, or something like that. And so that part of it isn't really going to help me. I'm going to have to dig deeper.
Basically, yeah. So I would usually, my typical intervention in that sort of situation would be a 3 to 4 week, what they call reverse diet. Bodybuilders have been doing that for 30 to 40 years now, and it's effectively priming, but not. It's priming without the instinctiveness of it or the force feeding. It's like a subtle kind of priming, I guess, leptin reset kind of thing. What we find is reverse T3. All the hormones are better regulated after a period of 3 to 4 weeks of chronic over dieting. I also, again, would look at the length of time that someone's been dieting to drop fat. If you tell me, Serena, I've been at, I don't know, 140 fat, 100 protein, or vice versa, I've been doing that for 4 months, so I've not dropped any weight, there's something wrong. Assuming I looked at you, but then I have to look at you and say, you are overweight. Now, if I look at you now, I don't see an overweight, over-fat lady. So for me, it's a bit perplexing. But then I think, well, I don't know what her goals are. Maybe she needs just gain some muscle, then that weight that she holds will look better. So, you know.
Okay, so I am 132 as of this morning, so 7 pounds from my goal. I want to build more muscle. Maybe losing the weight isn't as important. Maybe what I want to do is just go ahead and try to build muscle from here and hope that my stature will be a little bit smaller from the muscle that I build and burning the fat. So I start today, let's say, at would I do the 125 grams of protein or 132 because that's what I weigh now?
I try the 132 to be honest. But
Okay.
if you had some symptoms where it's like a bit too much, you feel like you're forcing it, I'd say, yeah, don't force it. There aren't situations when the average, I say layperson, as in non-athlete, needs to push the boundaries. It should always be within that kind of 95% general population kind of demographic protein fat kind of amounts. The extremes are people like me, so bodybuilders, hard intense training, busy things like that, or like the endurance athletes as well. People like that would actually have a different kind of way to calculate things, but the average person doesn't need to push it, if that makes sense. They don't need to force feed or starve or, I think pretty much everyone can get to their endpoint, providing there's nothing drastically hormonally wrong with them.
Okay. So cardio or weightlifting for people, what do you recommend the most?
Probably guess weightlifting by a mile. Yeah, for
It's a
muscle
trick
mass
question.
retention. I think the problem with you do create a lot of oxidative products from cardio. I mean, you put someone on a treadmill for an hour and say they do, 130 plus beats per minute, heart rate, da da da. Okay, great. They get a certain result, but they're not building more muscle. They're losing fat, but their metabolic rate is actually down regulating because they're putting their body in a state of overstress, overburden relative to the amount of time that actually putting in to exercise. The risk or incidence of left ventricular hypertrophy will be significantly higher compared to that of someone which is doing resistance training. The reason being is your heart rate isn't going to be 130 plus in most cases if you're doing resistance training for an hour, but it will be if you're on an elliptical trainer at a steady state, and that's what seems to cause that left side of the heart to build up beyond the point it's naturally meant to be. So although I am very bodybuilding focused, I would say there's a limit to people, but the average person coming to this diet doing training is not going to put themselves at significant risk. All I would say as well is be careful to just stay true to the diet and stick to the diet as close as you can. The more muscle you build, the more mitochondrial potential energy that you can create through the brain and the heart will be to reduce. So you're basically taking all that mitochondrial recovery capacity from here and here, you're putting it in your arm sort of thing. You're not going to live as long. Your body's blueprint isn't to be my size. So I'm not suggesting people be my size. It's not healthy. It's just what I happen to do to enjoy my life. But you can see how what I'm saying here is like there's enough muscle that you need, but not so much that becomes a point where it becomes that toxic overburden and you start to
Mhm.
reduce your lifespan.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This was really great. Let's tell people how they can find you.
So you can find me on YouTube, and my channel is Carnivore Muscle. And you can find me on Instagram, and that is also Carnivore Muscle. And thank you very much for having me on. I've had a delightful time. I've really enjoyed this interview. Very sensible questions asked from a very sensible lady.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. This was really great. And thank you so much for watching. Be safe and be well. And I'll see you next time on the Carnivore Revolution.